Hello everyone, thank you for joining us here for today's CBAA webinar brought to you with the support of the Community Media Training Organisation. Today's topic, formats and programming strategies. My name is Danny Shipley from the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. Before we get started, just to let you know that this session is being broadcast to you live from Gadigal land. And as such, I'd like to pay respects and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. I know a few people are getting busy there in the chat box as well, letting us know the stations they're calling from. Please also use this as an opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from which you're joining us. Big session for you today. I'll whip through this introduction as quick as I possibly can. We're going to talk about how you know what your audience wants and you know what you want your station to sound like, but how can we as community broadcasters bring these concepts to life? I am very happy to say that we're going to be joined today by special presenter Fyona Smith, who's the head of radio at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. Fyona has produced and presented award-winning local and national shows and is a multi-Australian commercial radio award winner. She is the executive producer of the AFTRS Audio Boom channel, which showcases student work and industry research, and she holds a graduate certificate in tertiary teaching. And yes, that jacket she's wearing is sparkling. Now, I could go on and on about all the things that Fyona brings to this, but you'd probably be better off listening to what Fyona has to say about it. Fyona, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for this today.
Thank you so much, Danny, for that wonderful intro. And I am coming to you from Gadigal and Bidjigal country, both from the Eora Nation as well. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today, to have the chance to deliver a webinar for the community broadcasting sector, and we are so thrilled to have such a wonderful relationship with you all. Many of our AFTRS students get their first start in radio with their local community radio station, and that's where they really fall in love with audio storytelling. So it's an absolute privilege to be able to have the chance to deliver this webinar for you today. And I will be sharing my screen with you shortly. I thought I would wear a spectacular, yes, sequin jacket for you, just for a bit of fun. I'm sure you're all been keeping yourselves creatively stimulated in different ways with the social distancing situation that we have at the moment in place. It's a very interesting year and interesting circumstances that we find ourselves in. But I will begin by sharing my screen with you, and hopefully I can show you my, very soon, I will share my screen, and hopefully,
I can confirm that your screen is showing up now, but it's asking you how's your call quality.
Oh, is it?
So
well, that's
probably
not the screen that I want. Give me a moment. I'm sorry for the delay. I've got probably too many windows open. Bear with me.
And I'll stay on and let you know when the screen that you want to show shows up, Fyona.
Thank you. It is not that screen. So I've just, oh, here we go. Sorry, new share. There we go. This one. Okay. I think we've got the right screen now.
Yep, that looks to be the right one there, Fyona.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So the call quality is excellent. And welcome to Playlists and Programming Strategies, our webinar for today. And I will skip on down to the next slide for you. Today we're going to talk about some strategies for audience tactics. So identifying and understanding your audience, reviewing formats, creating a core listener profile, and also content that's designed to connect with audiences. I happen to be wearing a t-shirt as well as a crazy sparkly jacket that says good content, which at AFTRS we're all about good content, and that's actually an AFTRS shirt. If anyone's interested in getting one, I can connect you with that. We also cover simple strategic music programming techniques as well. Easy ways for you to improve your playlist and increase time spent listening. Prior to joining AFTRS, I had the pleasure of being a national music director for a network of radio stations and looking after the playlists for them. And music's what actually led me to radio. I really wanted to be surrounded by music in my work, and I found that through radio. So we're going to cover some easy steps that you can take to improve your playlists. And we're also going to have a look at some of the technology that's available for creating content from home. I know that many of you have had to modify how you're making content in different ways, and even how we're all meeting today is using some of the opportunities that are available with apps and technology. So we're going to have a look at ways you can continue to deliver and create content outside of the station as well. So the very first place that I'd like to start is also to encourage, if you haven't already got handy, a pen and paper would be awesome if you could get something for writing down some notes as we cover the topics today, because I really want you to think about how it relates to you and your station or your show or program that you're working on, because there's going to be a lot of chances for us to stop down and do a little activity, and I'd love it if you're able to take notes on whatever way. You might even have another laptop handy that you can do that on. But first of all, when we're thinking about content and connecting with audiences, we really have to start at the very beginning, which is identifying and understanding your audience. That is always step one. It's really key to know your audience. And all of you would have a really good idea who that is at the moment. But if you're interested in growing your audience or increasing time spent listening, otherwise known as TSL, it's really essential to understand exactly who your audience is and the audience that you're hoping to attract as well. So sometimes this can mean unpacking or identifying demographics and or psychographics as well. So how do you identify a potential audience and what's important to them? Because often we can make assumptions about who we think is listening, and we may not necessarily really know who that is. And one of the challenges that, particularly for community radio stations outside of the public or commercial sector, one of the challenges and one of the benefits that you guys have is that often your listenership is really broad. You could have a listener who's 17 right through their late 80s that listens to your station or program regularly. So in order to refine the sound of your station, or this can also be applied for your show or program, you need to define the target audience, because you can't simply have a core audience that is that broad for the purposes of this task. You need to narrow it down. And so in order to refine the sound, you need to think about that target audience. So key to that is to think about who the majority are first. So have a think now about your very own show or your station. I know some of you are joining us. I know that Brianna, I think, is joining us from Alpine Radio. Or no, Nick Brown, I think. And we've got Brianna joining us from, is it 4RFM community radio station? So we've got people coming from very different locations. And I know that you're going to have very different audiences. So have a moment to think about not just that full range of 17 to 80, but thinking about who would be the majority of people that if you had to force them into one category or two, one's ideal, who would they be? So think about who the majority are first. And sometimes this might involve a demographic, but it could also involve a psychographic or a combination of both. So for example, if you're trying to attract people who are community-minded, casually employed, interested in strengthening and developing social connections, and maybe their hobbies are social issues, the environment, music, you could develop a listener profile based on this information, and that would be what we would call a psychographic. Whereas for other stations, it might be more relevant to think about the majority as being people between the ages of 30 to 45 who are interested in sports, the outdoors, and their local community that may fit better for you. So how can you do this? Well, analyze your market and your station as well. So often when we are thinking about how we want to attract an audience to our own program, we can be focused on what we're doing, a bit like wearing kind of blinkers either side, and not so much focused on what else is happening in our market. So I would encourage you to analyze your market and your station first. So what other options are available in your market for your listeners? Are there other radio stations? Are there other listening platforms that are quite popular that people may be listening or streaming from? Have a think about the way that these are being offered in your market, and also think about what's currently being offered on your station as well. So when you think about that core audience that you have, or that you're hoping to attract, because often the listeners that we do have might not be the listeners that we're hoping to have. So for each station or individual, this could be a very different task. Some of you might be hoping that you attract a different audience, and some of you might be hoping that you grow your existing audience. So analyze the market and also the station. And one thing that's really useful for this task as well, after you've done that, is to create a listener profile. So we'll take you through those next key steps now. So when we're researching our audience, things that you can do include looking at sources. So there's a lot of data. I mean, there's been so many ways of collecting data, particularly with technology and platforms and social media. You can have a look at some sources. You can even look at the census data that's available for your area, about how many people, you know, the population, the kinds of people that are living there, what are they doing for work. You can also, if you have access to any ratings information, and also analyze what your competitors are doing. What are they offering? What's similar and what's different? So what I would suggest you do is conduct what's called a SWOT analysis, which stands for thinking about your station's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It doesn't have to be overly complicated or extensive, but if you just put down even a couple of those key things, and even have a think about now, what would be one of the strengths of your own radio station? I'll jump onto the chat and see some of the responses. What's a strength? And now Robert Smith has asked, does listenership have to be associated with sponsorship? No, not necessarily, it doesn't. So is there what's one thing that's a strength from your station? So I've got one from Karina, and Karina has shared genuine, which, you know, that is a strength. If you think that your audience considers the station to be genuine, that's a really strong point. Anybody else got some strengths that their station does? Community involvement from Denise, with interviews and face-to-face as well as telephone. Peter Stanton has shared with us that the station that he's from is very trusted, and that's really important. So they're really great strengths. And now, how to think about what some of the weaknesses are for your station. So many, everyone's been on a very great typing mission just then. 200 keen volunteers who can connect. Thank you, Margot, for that. What's some of the weaknesses that you have? Presenters not developing their own listenership. Yeah, that's a weakness. Yep, Robin, spot on. That is a weakness. Often they are not thinking about growing their audience or developing content for a specific listener. Not always having $1 million. Exactly, Margot. Yep, funding is an ongoing challenge, particularly in this very challenging circumstances. Cassie's shared that we don't appeal to the younger generation. So that's a weakness, and that could be something that you could design a specific program around to try to attract more younger listeners too. And now it's also thinking about opportunities. So what are some of the opportunities that you think your station could do more of? So for example, if you have a show that's not really trying to grow their audience, the opportunity is then for them to start engaging with their audience in different ways and thinking about content that's going to connect with that audience. And the final stage is also, oh, that's a good point, Richard. People tuning in for particular programs, but not staying tuned in. Yes, so that's time spent listening. And that is something that we're going to talk about when we get to music programming strategies on how to increase that. The last point in the SWOT analysis is to do to analyze the threats as well. So some people might say that a threat could be platforms like Spotify or Audible to radio. We know that radio has been a medium that's been under threat or been told that it'll all be over many times, and radio proves that it remains very relevant because of its immediacy and ability to connect so closely with people in community. So the next step that is a fun task for you to do is to develop a listener profile. Now, this is really helpful, as I said before, for both stations and also individual programs. So you might have one for your station overall, a listener profile for the majority of listeners. And then you might also encourage each individual program or show to develop their own, because I know in community, one of the best things about having block programming formats where different shows that have very different styles of programming are on back to back is that you do have very different listeners tuning in as well. So this is just a paragraph or two that describes a person who represents your core audience. Remember, that's what we're talking about with listener profiles. We're not saying that you don't attract 17-year-olds or that you don't attract 80-year-olds, but we're just talking about the core. Who are the majority that are listening? That's who you develop your listener profile for. And if I click on, whoops, too fast. So what I would like you to do now is to have a think about writing a listener profile for your own show or your own station. So describe your typical listeners. And remember, we're thinking about the core audience, not the really broad range, but just if you had to say who the majority are, that's who we're going to write it for. It only needs to be 1 or 2 paragraphs. And just think about their lifestyle, their interests, maybe their personality traits, socioeconomic status, maybe their education, employment, family. It's something for you to base on who you think your listeners are. So have a go at that. And I would love to have an example if you want to type and share your idea of your own listener profile for your program or station. I'll give you a couple of moments to consider that. It's a really useful tool. The reason why we develop listener profiles is it helps act as a bit of a filter for not only the type of music that you play, but also for the type of programming that you cover as well. So guests that you may interview, content that you may talk about, the social media platforms that you might select to use to connect to that particular listener as well could vary as well. So Brianna is the first person to contribute here, and Brianna hosts a worship hour on a Sunday morning. My show's listener profile would be an adult Christian, aged on average 30 years old, and who works shift work and also raising young families. So that's very useful. Brianna already knows the kind of age that they are, a bit about their background, and that they also have a young family. So that is very helpful when you're thinking about what kinds of things is then that listener interested in. So they're going to be interested in what the latest is about, are children able to go to preschool or back to school? They're going to be interested in job security. They're going to be interested in ways to make amazing recipes at home for less because they might be saving money. They're shift workers. They might be interested in programming that connects about how to reset your body clock or how to make your room more of a sleep sanctuary, for example. Now, Karina's hit a bit of a roadblock. You feel like you're being a bit biased towards listeners who call us. That's true, because just because you have a regular doesn't necessarily mean they reflect your core audience. A good way to get to know your listeners a great passive way to get to know your listeners would be by using a social media platform where you could run some polls there, or on your website you could ask them to complete a survey monkey, which both can be used with no investment required. And that way you could ask a few questions and people don't have to really disclose any private information as well. So SurveyMonkey is great for that, where they could just be answering kind of broadly the age group they fit into, their interests, what they'd like to hear more of, who they're listening to at the moment, what they enjoy, that kind of thing as well. Trent's raised a really great point. The time slot should dictate the music played, not the announcer's availability. That's very true, Trent. That's music programming 101 right there. Craig has said that the program that he's working on is based around indie pop music. Fantastic. The latest music and favourites and vinyl collectors. So people who really dig music, I can relate. Workers, maybe shift workers. Single program is based around music fans. So that's for, you know, that's a real psychographic right there as well, Trent, because it's really about people who appreciate at a committed level music, which is great. So we'll just move on to the next slide here. So when you are considering your audience, you think about who they are, what they do, where do they go, what are their shopping or lifestyle habits. That can sometimes be helpful as well. And even if you don't know and you don't have any kind of real data on this at the moment, I'm sure that when you are coming into the station, you've got in mind someone who you think would be interested in your program. So you can always write for that as well. Mia has shared a listener profile, well educated with tertiary qualifications, generally aged between 40 and 80, progressive views, passionate about the arts, the environment and democracy, community minded. So that's really great. That gives you a lot of information right there that will help as a content filter for when you're thinking about what kinds of things you should have on your show. Oops, go back. So this is just a way of visually prompting and can be used. And by the way, I am happy to share this with all of you. So you'll have your own copy of this, which I'll give to Danny to distribute. So if you are trying to frantically write down everything you're seeing on the slides, you don't need to. You will have it sent to you, which I'm happy to share for you. So here's the kinds of things that should contribute to your listener profile. There's lifestyle and interests, which we've talked about. What are they interested? What are they doing socially? And also you could include social media use. Are they on Facebook? Do they prefer to use Instagram? Where are they based? What do they do for work? And the demographic and psychographic info there as well. So we're going to get into some music programming strategies now, some simple music programming techniques that can enhance your playlist without you having to reinvent the wheel. I have a classic kind of saying I often say when I'm teaching music programming, which is, you know, don't change the station, change the songs, basically. If you're having challenges in attracting an audience, have a look at the music strategy and consider what songs you are playing. So the essentials with music programming, it's primarily about two key points: which songs you play and how you play them. Now, I'm sure all of you can relate when you think about some of your favorite songs. We have this ability with music, it really connects with us on a real emotional level. And songs can make us feel happy, songs can make us feel motivated, and songs can also make us feel quite, you know, excited and also relaxed as well. So music is great for that. It can really change your mood, which is fantastic. And it's really interesting, but the formative years, which is the years that you are transitioning from childhood to adulthood, the fun teenage years, I guess, coming of age, they have a significant impact on the music and your musical tastes as adults. So being able to understand and connect to the formative years with your audience. For example, if you were targeting an audience that are in their 40s, late 30s, mid 40s, the 90s would feature, the 80s and 90s music you'd find would become some of your core artists, because that was the formative years of that age group. So once you've determined your target audience, have a look at the formative years and then identify the core artists that should be in your playlist. So for example, I just mentioned the 80s and 90s. Two great decades for music, but we do know there's also, particularly with the 90s had kind of two key genres that dominated. So you had the fantastic Seattle sound with Nirvana and Pearl Jam. We had great rock come out of the 90s, but we also had one-hit wonders and a lot of pop, but it didn't stick around. They literally was just one-hit wonders, one after the other. You never heard from them again. They were just dance floor kind of pop hits as well. So you wouldn't necessarily make them your core artists, because there's not enough of them from a particular band or artist to become a core artist of a radio station. But they might be fun to play once in a while. The next thing that I will show you is how to increase TSL, or time spent listening, through music programming. So have a look at your music universe. And when I say your music universe, that is your music library of the songs that you're selecting either for your program or for your radio station, okay? And you want to have a look at that and consider, is that actually right for the strategy in attracting that audience that you want to, or growing your existing audience? Review the selection process as well. Sometimes when we're first starting out with selecting music, we can often choose songs that we like as individuals, or what we would like to listen to. And you really need to be programming for your audience, not yourself. It is a great habit to get into as well if you're selecting new music to add, that the process involves 3 people. The reason why I say 3 is so that it doesn't become a bit of tug of war, and that there is a deciding kind of vote there. It just makes it less confrontational and more fun. So another thing you can do to increase time spent listening is great scheduling. So if listeners like what they hear, they're more likely to stick around. So aim for variety and balance. They're the 2 things to strive for with your music programming. So what that means is you don't want to have kind of, unless it's a specific show that is all 80s, then you want to have variety. So you want to have maybe something from the 80s with something from now, back to back, rather than 2 from the same genre, the same era or genre. And you also want to have variety of mood and tempo. So you want to maybe start the hour with something uplifting, and then you can play a slower song after that. So you want to aim for variety and balance. The other thing to do is to be familiar. Surround polarizing artists with strong and well-liked artists. That is a secret for success as well. Program for your station's audience, not yourself. I've already touched on that. And rotate songs regularly. Now, one person in the chat, I have to scroll back up and see who was talking about that, but I did see it come through. It was a really key point. You need to rotate your songs regularly. Rotations are important because you don't want to hear the same songs on the way to work as on the way home. Otherwise, you're just listening to your own, favorite mix playlist on your own device. And you also don't want to hear spike tracks, what we call spike tracks, so some of those one-hit wonders, or songs like, what's an example? Maybe Nutbush City. Nutbush City Limits is a fantastic song, but we don't want to hear that every day. We want to have variety so that when it does play, you think, I haven't heard this in ages. That's what you're always going for. And look out at the songs. Look for the songs that maybe have been rested from your playlist. Should some of those be moved back into rotation as well? And think about how this applies to your own show and community radio station. So what's the kind of message, what are the kind of songs that you are playing at the moment? And Anne, that's a great question that's come through. Please expand on be familiar. What I mean by playing a familiar artist is a well-known artist. So if you've got something new that you're introducing to your audience, surrounded by a song that's really familiar to your audience. For example, you know, surround it with something from the Beatles, or a really established artist like In Excess, something that their audience knows from the first moment they hear it, that they know it's familiar. That's the best way to introduce new music, because if you just, unless it's a new music show, because then your audience is expecting to hear songs they're not familiar with. But otherwise, we want to actually hear what we already know and like. And Peter has said, traditionally, community radio has encouraged niche music formatting. And 2BRW is the unique station, doesn't have a lot of competition. Fantastic. You're often told that you sound too commercial. That's interesting. So how do we separate the positioning and content of community radio stations from commercial competitors? Well, I would suggest you play songs that they're not playing. That would be an easy way to do it. And there's some fantastic Australian music from all genres and all age groups that is available. You just have to look for it. There's lots of great acts. When someone's actually, Mia has just talked about that they're doing a lot of scheduling to support new Indigenous artists as well, like Thelma Plum, which is fantastic. She's great. So yeah, surround, I guess if you're being told you sound too commercial, have a look at why are they saying that? Is it because the same songs are being played on the commercial stations as well? And if so, maybe there's some other ones you can throw into the mix, so it'll make the overall playlist and overall hour sound very different and distinct from that as well. Now I'm going to move on to the next slide, because another fun thing you can do is to create some music features. So think about some of the music features that you've heard, or has anyone got some they'd like to share from your station? Are you doing, 8 minutes of the 80s? Are you doing acoustic afternoons? What's the music features that you're doing? I'm just going to grab a quick little drink. So Stephanie's shared that at her station, they're also looking at what's happening in the community. So who's touring, what festivals or events are happening, whether it's NAIDOC week, are there anniversaries or birthdays or deaths from famous musicians. That's a really great way to create some music features around that, Stephanie. Brianna has said that the youth are doing some theme shows. That's great. A great theme show is always a good one. Mia has a show focused on local music called Northern Rivers Music Box. That's a great name.
And I'll just jump in here. I saw one there from Rachel Tyler Jones, who've got the feature is Aussie Lunchbox.
Oh, Aussie Lunchbox. Love it.
An hour of Aussie music at midday each day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the Rock Box from Cassie on Sunday nights. So music features are a great way to also spice up your playlist and have a bit of fun with in a creative way for your audience as well. And it's a nice way to, and for these, you don't need any money to do them. It's really just down to coming up with a creative concept and selecting the songs that fit as well. So that's something that you can do. Now we have hit the fun bit about technology available to help you make content from home and outside the station. Now, I'm not sure if anybody is currently using this, but one of the ways that we have been recording phone calls from different locations that are broadcast quality is through an app called Ringr. R-I-N-G-R is how it is spelt. And I've popped the website up there as well. And it now allows you to have up to 4 guests at a time on the call as well. And how it works, there's a great intro video on their website. But how it works is that you would schedule a call through download the app, of course, sign up and download the app. They offer, I think, 30 days free. as well for an account. And then there's a small charge each month. And how it works is then you have the app, you open the app on your phone, and you pop in the email address of the person that you would like to record, and then they get an invite. They also need to download the app, and then you can make the call and talk to them using your own phone. I recommend you attach a smartphone microphone to your phone to improve the quality, or you can actually use it with just your headphones plugged in as well, but you do need to plug at least headphones into it for it to work. And then you have a conversation, and as soon as you've finished, it will actually email to your address, the account holder, the audio file ready to go. And it sounds like you're both in the same studio at the same time, which is pretty magnificent for these circumstances. So that's one that I can recommend, is Ringer. And I'm sure that many of you have already got yourself a bit of a home studio set up for recording at home. One of my favorite pieces of equipment, and I'm certainly not endorsed, although I wish I was, is by Rode microphones, is their USB microphone. The reason I love this microphone so much is that its price point is under $200. So it's far more affordable than some others. And you can literally just plug it straight into your laptop, and it instantly improves your call quality. So I've used that for many voiceover at home for radio and podcast purposes. And that's an option for you as well. I'm sure there are plenty of USB microphones that are available, but that one just happens to be one of my favorites. For audio editing, I know a lot of you use very different programs. There's plenty of them on market, from Audacity to, is it Hinder? Danny, help me out. It starts with an H. Is it Hindenburg?
Hindenburg, like the...
Hindenburg, there we go.
Yeah.
I knew I was close. And there's others. And there's a couple that are available online as well, which you can use through the cloud. They're cloud software, they're cloud-based software, and that is Adobe Audition and Pro Tools. Now, if anybody is a student at the moment, Avid, which is the company that looks after both of these, is offering, if your school or course that you're enrolled in, they are offering, I think it's 3 months free at the moment because of the COVID-19 situation. But otherwise, they are available for everyone on a user account that's invoiced, I think, either quarterly or annually. And Adobe Audition's great. Pro Tools is for the more serious contender. Its interface is far more complicated than Adobe Audition's, I should say, is more in depth, and but it produces beautiful work as well. So Adobe Audition and Pro Tools are both available outside of the radio station. And the one thing that you definitely need to do is to make yourself a home studio. So here we have a picture of one of our students, Jay Gasser, who he's also wearing the Good Content brand. He's also set up a little home studio using a Rode USB mic, as you can see here, and a doona over his head. Now, I know it looks kind of a bit funny, but it does work and significantly enhances the quality of your audio. So if you do have a script to read, might be a bit difficult for your show. You probably want to make a bit of a cubby house using a table so you don't have to hold the doona over your head. But it definitely makes the audio quality far higher quality very easily. So using a doona, or even sometimes I have friends who've recorded ads in their wardrobe with their clothes hanging up using their phone, because it's really dense for the audio as well. And Peter has said Studio 4 is $160 outright for a microphone. So there you go, a nice bargain there too. And Adam's shared that sometimes he likes recording in the car. The car is definitely a winner. It's perfect recording environment if you can get in there by yourself. Not so good if you've got some passengers, but it is a really good dead sound environment. You're absolutely right, Adam. Thank you for sharing that. So you're a laptop and a microphone and a doona, you've got yourself a home studio. One of the ways that we're actually delivering some shows at the moment at AFTRS outside of our radio studios, which we can't access at the moment, is via Zoom. So we're using Zoom for shows because Zoom automatically record a video and audio file for the call. So that's an option as well. And I think, Danny, you've been using Zoom as well, haven't you, for shows?
I have indeed been using Zoom,
Yeah.
and I think I'm going to take on the Zoom plus Doona option.
Zoom
or
plus Doona. Yeah, I can highly recommend.
Yeah, that
Zoom
sounds
plus
like the
Doona
way to
would
go.
work.
And I had seen people doing it, but also the car. What a great idea.
Yeah, the car is a really good one. Particularly just adding next level to the car environment. If you happen to be in an underground car park in a car, that's even better. So these are just interesting and fun ways that you can record audio and enhance the content very easily without having to really spend much at all. So we're fortunate that our playout system that we have at AFTRS is called Zeta, and it comes with an app called ZentoGo. It means that we're able to access our studio outside of the studio from a mobile phone, a tablet or a laptop. I can play this little video, Danny. Let me know if the sound doesn't play, because that won't really be exciting if it doesn't.
No worries, it should hopefully work.
Okay.
RCS presents
Very full on
your complete mobile playout management system. Using a tablet or smartphone, you can access your automation from anywhere at any time. You can see your logs, fire off hotkeys, adjust your segues, and record voice tracks. ZentoGo is cross-browser compatible. You can place the tracks right into the log from any web-enabled device. And a handy way to make changes and improvements to your station from anywhere. It's fast and secure, and gives you a remote application that saves on expensive microwave stubs or telephone lines. Now you've got your automation playout system right in the palm of your hand. You've got to see ZentoGo in action.
I just love I love the drama of that video. It's very bold. So yeah, we've got ZentoGo, which allows us to kind of make changes from laptops and, as I said, from mobile phones, which is really great. Thankfully, we managed to leave the fader up we needed to in the studio before we had to stop going there. But it is an option, and I'm sure that there's a variety of playout systems that you all have access to. Some may not have an app attached, so that would be a challenge. And I guess under these circumstances, then you could consider having people record their show in Zoom and having a limited number of people load that into the studio for playing out rather than live. It could be an alternative as well. But that is, oops, we don't need to watch it twice. Trying to help out of here. What's happened? Well, I think it's frozen.
That's okay. We can still hear you.
You can still hear me? All right, I'll try to.
And while you're unfreezing, I'll just put forward a couple of things that have come through. And this is stuff that's come through via the Facebook. Anthony has said Avid only looks after Pro Tools, but also Adobe Audition, which is run by Adobe, has student pricing as well. Hindenburg News has trial licenses available too. Geordie from the CMTO has let us know.
Thanks,
and also further to that point you referenced there about Australian music earlier, couldn't let that one go through to the keeper without mentioning the fact that the new AMRAP website is up and available now for broadcasters. So hopefully you're using that to get your fix of great Aussie music.
Yeah, that's great. For some reason, this has, I will try and, I've stopped sharing, but I will try to log into my Prezzo again. I think it just, a few technical issues there.
No worries. It's meant the camera's been able to zoom in on that wonderful jacket. Everyone, we've only got another 15 minutes of this jacket to go today. So
I know. I hope I'm not hurting anyone's eyes, but I will just skip down. I think we were almost towards the end anyway. Yeah, we were. So I will just, get back to that. It was about to talk about the calls that the competition that we're going to be running. That was
Yes.
the slide we're up to, which is very exciting. So AFTRS is running in collaboration with the CBAA, a competition for community radio people to enter and to win a free course with our radio fundamentals that's coming up in July, I believe. So the details to enter are going to be available on the CBAA website. Danny, that's right.
Yes, it is going to be on the website pretty much at the conclusion of today's webinar. You'll be able to go on there, and it's very easy. It's just a quick jot form that you need to enter. The competition, I believe, will be open for a week, and then it will be there available. One free admission to the Radio Fundamentals 6-week course. That's really wonderful of AFTRS to offer that as well. So thank you very much for that, Fyona.
You are very welcome. And I just thought another thing I could mention is this presentation that I have delivered for you today was made with a program called Canva. I'm not sure if anyone's using Canva at the moment, but we really love Canva at AFTRS, and the staff and students, we all use it for a variety of purposes. It's a great way if you're doing newsletters or if you're doing a presentation. Some people even use it just for invitations for events or flyers. There's templates for every occasion you can think of, and there's some great free options with Canva as well.
Yes, Brianna says they've got a not-for-profit access level there, so that's fantastic.
Ooh, that is fantastic. So yeah, definitely seize that opportunity, because Canva is wonderful and really easy to use as well, which is always my favorite kind of app. Ones that are very simplified and intuitive are the best. But that brings us to the very end, and if you are interested in getting in touch or have any more questions, there's some details for you. And like I said, happy to share this presentation as well. So hopefully you have enjoyed it. And if you've got any final questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Excellent. I will go through. There's been so much stuff come through on the old Zoom chat today. I will try and go back through. June asks, are there varying degrees of IT literacy, and Audacity is also easy to use. We didn't bring up Audacity. That is a great free program there for your audio editing. I
mentioned it briefly, but I probably didn't touch on it very long. But yeah, Audacity is a great free option if you're looking for a quick way to edit.
Joe asks, are there operating system limitations with the new AMRAP site? The new AMRAP site doesn't like Internet Explorer and Firefox too much. It works best on Chrome. That's something that they're trying to iron out, but that will all get sorted. But if you're able to use Chrome, that will give you your best AMRAP usage experience.
And there's also great music available from the IndigiTube website too.
Indeed. Yes, we're very lucky here in the community sector to have so many organisations making so much great music available to people. When we were on the discussion there about the best places to be recording or the best ways and methods to record your program remotely, the suggestion there that you can get reflection shields to put from Robert McKean to put behind your USB microphone that work like a mini version of a studio baffle, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great way.
Hopefully, do we answer everything in the... we did sort of have a couple of questions. Peter Ricketts asked this question at the outset about programming templates in Word and Excel. I'm assuming you sort of templates for a programming grid?
Yeah,
I'm assuming is what he's talking about.
Or planning for show prep. There's definitely, I'm happy to share a couple that we use at AFTRS for planning shows. I think, is that what you're after, or more for a music clock? They're kind of a couple. June has got lots of ideas that are going on that you're very welcome to. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I think a format clock sort of goes into the next question that Annette Smith has put into the Q&A. She always uses a music format clock for her own programs, and just wondering sort of about the increased usage of that format in community radio. I would imagine we will see increased usage if we're able to obtain that template.
Yeah, you can. And look, with a clock, a format clock is simply a plan for your, just for anyone that's not kind of familiar with the term, a format clock is a plan that you are breaking up the hour for 1 hour of your program and planning out kind of the minutes of that. So it's a way to have a visual representation of the hour and to plan out where your talk breaks are and how many songs are between them. And it's a useful tool, and you can design your own for your show, or you might have at your station, depending on how the playlist is made, the music director or person responsible for organising the playlist might be able to give you that information, and you could make your own template. But often if we're using for show prep, we tend to use a lot of Word documents just using table function, just because you can make the font really big, and Excel can become a bit problematic if you start to make, use font 16 and above.
Yeah.
So yeah, Word tables are a good easy way to make a plan for that 1 hour, and just have a visual representation of how you're going to have the hour for the program as well. I just wanted to give an extra mention to Andrea from CBAA, who has popped in the direct link to the competition we were speaking about into the chat group as well. So jump on there and get your details in, because you could be winning a free course at AFTRS, which should be fantastic, I'm sure, for your station and yourself.
Mia from Bay FM asks a question, which is very much, how can you summarise this webinar? I was a little late to the webinar. Were there tips on how to decide what to program when on particularly given days, e.g. what type of shows to play over lunch, how much talk to play in a row compared to music, what sort of music should be played on a Sunday morning compared to Friday night? Now, I don't want to speak on behalf of Fyona, but I'm pretty sure she said death metal all the time.
Only after 11 p.m. But look, day parts are really important, and they do depend on your own station. So some stations, for example, a station that if your format is metal and rock, it would be totally appropriate to play a really, loud AC/DC song first thing in the morning for breakfast, because the expectations from the audience would be there. But if you don't have that kind of format, taking into consideration your own audience, then that will dictate the day part strategies that you have, based on also your music programming strategy. So it's about thinking what kinds of songs would be appropriate to play in breakfast and what kinds of songs would not. And that could be, you might decide that you don't play songs over 4 minutes, for example, in breakfast, and only play songs that are 4 minutes and over across the day, and really extended songs late at night. So it really varies for your own station. There isn't a simple rule, one size fits all for all occasions. It's very determined on your own format for your station. And I'm sure though it's just about thinking about it in terms of what would be suitable, and if the weekends need to be a bit lighter, have a bit more of an uplifting mood when people are relaxing, and you can have that freedom. But yeah, thinking about day parts is definitely really key.
I think that's a really great point there about the length of songs and how that impacts on programming. Is there sort of a general sort of rule as to how much talk in a talk break is too much?
Well, I think it's a bit of how long is a piece of string. It really needs to be, if you don't have a talk station or a talk show, if it's not talk or talk back, then I don't think it should be as long. But if it's really interesting content, people are going to want to continue listening.
Yeah.
If it's not and you're starting to waffle, you should know yourself, you need to wrap it up. And on that note, I think we are almost ready to wrap here before I start waffling.
Oh, can I just say thank you once again, Fyona, for taking the time out of your day today to not only just present this, but put all of those resources together. It's invaluable stuff.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, Danny. It's a real pleasure, and I love the opportunity and look forward to doing this again.
And the fact that you went above and beyond in the wardrobe department as well.
I know. Look, it doesn't get seen often, and I just thought I'd bring it out for a bit of fun.
That's really wonderful. And just to sort of reiterate also, you check that link that Andrea put up.
Enter the competition, please. Enter the competition.
And we'll be letting people know about that in all of our follow-up for today's webinar. If we missed any of your questions, please do send us an email here at the CBAA. You can get me at dshipley@cbaa.org.au. And Fiona, I believe you put up the, is it radio at afters is the best email address to get you on?
That's the most easiest one to remember because my name's spelled differently, and the radio at afters, you'll reach the radio team, and that's the best email. But thanks again so much for having me, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Excellent. And stay safe and healthy, please, everyone. This is Dan Shipley on behalf of the Community Broadcasting Association saying farewell. Also on behalf of our colleagues there at the Community Media Training Organisation at cmto.org.au if you want to find out more. And you best believe you can find out more about what's happening at the Australian Film, Television and Radio School if you go to www.aftrs.edu.au. Thanks again, everyone who joined us here via Zoom or live on Facebook. Wonderful to have you here. Keep an eye out on your emails from the CBAA. Webinars will be back again real soon.
Bye.
Thanks for joining.